In this video, we're going to go over how to realistically blur out the background so that it's not as distracting as it is if it's all in focus. So the first thing we're going to do, because these are destructive edits, meaning if I edit and change something within the photograph, I'm not going to be able to go back, or I'm not going to be able to go back easily. I'll have to redo it again. So the first step is going to be to duplicate the layer. So Control J will duplicate this layer. That way, if anything goes wrong in layer 1, I can always go back to the original background layer, which I haven't made any edits to. So I'm just kind of making sure I have a backup plan. For selecting my background, the best selection tool for this job is going to be the Quick Selection tool. Now, I went over in class, and I'll be going over it again, understanding the difference between how close objects are to your subject. So for example, my son Jack is my subject. The sofas are closer to him than the refrigerator and the cabinets. So I'm going to start with the cabinets first, and you'll notice I made my brush a lot bigger. And again, this is a quick selection tool. And I've got the plus that's inside of that circle showing that I'm adding to my selection. So I can click and just drag around, and the algorithms, they'll mathematically kind of figure out where the edges of objects are. Not always going to be perfect, but it's going to be fairly accurate. So like, for example, I'm going to blur out his tuft of hair right there. If it doesn't quite work, or if I accidentally overshoot it, the way I've just done by selecting the couch over here, I can hold Alt on the keyboard, which will give me a minus in the middle of the circle, showing that I'm going to not select that part anymore. And if I'm going to go into, so sorry, holding Alt again to get rid of this one section. If I want to go into smaller areas, I'm going to go ahead and make my brush smaller by using the bracket keys on the keyboard. I could also zoom in by going Control plus. So Control plus on the keyboard is going to zoom me in, and I could get a little closer in if I so chose. So at the moment, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out again. Control minus will zoom me out. From here, I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Okay, so again, Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And with the preview checked, I can already see a difference, okay, between what's happening back here. I can also zoom out on the picture here and see the same thing. But either way you want to view it is perfectly fine. Now, I don't want to go too far up, because this is going to blur it out unrealistically. Okay, so I want it to be blurry. I want it to be decently blurry because it's farther away from him, but it's not going to be so blurry that I wouldn't be able to tell what anything is. So I'm probably going to go for this one around 20, 18, 19. But I'm also going to be doing the couches in a sec. So I'm going to be doing 2 layers, right? So I'm not just going from not blurry to blurry. I'm going to go blurry to a little bit more blurry to a little bit more blurry. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK on this one. And then again, because these are destructive edits, okay, I'm going to duplicate this layer again. But I've already got this selected, so I'm going to Control D to deselect. Duplicate by going to Control J. And now I'm going to select the couches. So again, I'm going to make my brush bigger so that I can select the couches. And it doesn't matter that they're not right next to each other. It'll still add to that selection. And I'm going to hold Alt to try and get rid of the straw on the water bottle. Double checking. Actually going to go ahead in there as well. I'm going to go back to the same place I was before. So going to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. This time, I'm not going to go as blurry. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe about half that, right? So maybe around 6, around 7, right? So because it's in between Jack and the super background, so sort of an intermediate background, I don't want to have it as blurry as the farther background. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at 6, click OK. I can deselect, Control D, and then from here, I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'll name this last name underscore first name underscore blur. Change the type to JPEG and turn it in, well, save it, click OK, and then I would turn this in on Google Classroom.